Okay, today I'm going to be listening to Metastaseis by Greek composer Iannis Xenakis. This is our first Xenakis episode, and this is a great piece to start with if you want to start listening to his music. It's one of his first large pieces in the style he's known for, written from the year 1953 to 1954, and it is only 7 minutes long, so it's actually quite accessible and short. You need 61 players in total. The orchestra is 3-3-0-0, 3-2-2-0, and then timpani and 6 percussion, and then strings, recommended divisi, I guess the necessary divisi, is 12-12-8-8-6, because if you look at the score, you'll notice every string player has a unique part. This is a very textural piece, and a very extreme piece, and it predates Ligeti and his micropolyphony. It predates spectralism. It predates sonorism, which was going on in Poland later in the 60s and 70s. All these movements are very indebted to the originality of Xenakis putting together this piece. First performed in 1955 at the Donaueschingen Festival under the direction of Hans Rosbaud. It's dedicated to Maurice Leroux. The title means after a state of standstills, so it's some sort of dialectic transformation. Hinged between classical music and formalized music, which the composer was obliged to inculcate into composition. Formalized music is also the title of this publication by Xenakis, and it is subtitled Thought and Mathematics in Composition. And I think the original, this is compiled from a bunch of different sources, but the original sort of text is like 1963-ish it was published. You can kind of see, just glancing at the contents, what Xenakis is all about. We have this idea of stochastic music, and using stochastics to determine musical ideas, Markov chains and their relations to stochastic music, computer music, symbolic music. Then he starts talking about philosophy. He starts talking about specific ideas he has about where composition could go, like this idea of sieves, which is sort of like a logical way of describing musical parameters, and dynamic stochastic synthesis has its own little chapter. And if you look into Xenakis' work, he has pieces that are based on the movement of gases according to gas laws and things like that. So he not only draws from mathematical processes, but also from like physical models. So the orchestra is completely divisi. All 61 instrumentalists have different parts. That's very essential to this piece. There's a systematic use of glissandi, like individual glissandi, to create these sort of smearing effects. And this idea is related to Xenakis' architectural design of the Philips Pavilion at the 1958 Brussels Exposition. See how these straight lines sort of connect into this curved shape? That's sort of where Xenakis is coming from with, like, there's a relationship between that and this glissandi stuff you see here with all the strings. Also in the Philips Pavilion was housed a spatialized electronic music piece by composer Edgar Varèse called Poème électronique, So that's kind of interesting. I think Xenakis also composed the music that was in the entryway to the Phillips Pavilion. So as you entered Poème Electronique, you heard this piece of tape music by Xenakis called Concrete PH. That might be something to look into as well. And there's this idea of geometrical progression and use of the golden mean to determine timbres, dynamics, intervals of duration, which I find kind of the most interesting. Like you could structure a piece this way kind of thing. And yeah, there's like this sort of like mention at the end here of electromagnetic techniques. So there's like some sort of through line from electronic music and the sort of control the composer can have over sound in that medium, and then the orchestra and trying to do that type of thing with an orchestra. He is a composer who was born in 1922 and died in 2001. And he is born in Romania. I guess he had both Greek and French citizenship. Most of his career was in France. He fled Greece in 1947. And as well as being a composer, as I said before, he's an architect, an engineer, a music theorist, and I guess a conductor of sorts. And yeah, as I sort of hinted at with the formalized music stuff, he was really a pioneer of mathematical models as a way of modeling music, and also like applications of set theory, stochastic processes, and game theory. So these are all very like contemporary, interesting like things going on in mathematics at the time. His percussion works are very well performed, but Metastaseis is probably his most performed orchestra work and his most famous. He worked with Le Corbusier. Sorry if I butchered that. But that was sort of his artistic background, you could say, before he switched into composing. Let's see if I can find some of his work other than the Phillips Pavilion. What I'm more familiar with is this glass sort of window idea that he came up with for Le Corbusier's Sainte Marie de la Tourette, this priory building. You can see these like vertical lines over here. This is Xenakis' work. You can see there's like some much wider than others, and there's this sort of like structural there's like these horizontal divisions too, which kind of look to my eyes like musical notes. So yeah, these windows were Xenakis' work. So he wasn't just working in music. He was devising things like this. Famously, Xenakis studied with Olivier Messiaen. We looked at a piece by Messiaen last episode. And sort of pre-Metastaseis, Xenakis' compositions were sort of folk-inspired and sounded kind of like maybe Bartók a little bit. And Messiaen introduced him to serialism and sort of encouraged him to pursue what he was good at. I can't remember the quote exactly, but Messiaen basically told Xenakis, like, look, you're a mathematician, an engineer, you're Greek, you emigrated. That's what is interesting about you. That's what you have to offer the world as a composer. So lean into it, and I think that's an example of really good teaching, is encouraging the student to work with their strengths. And Xenakis did exactly that. He went on to be one of the most innovative composers of the 20th century. You might notice on Xenakis' face, He's often photographed from this side because he has a scar on one side of his face, which left him disfigured through most of his life. This he acquired as a member of the National Liberation Front during the Axis occupation of Greece in World War II. So Xenakis was part of the protests and demonstrations that were going on in Greece in 1944. And I can't remember exactly how he was injured, but I think there's a famous interview where he talks a little bit about how a lot of his music is trying to capture the sounds of that traumatic experience, like the sounds of people protesting and artillery fire. And it says here, shrapnel from a tank blast hit his cheek and left eye. His left eye was blinded for the rest of his life. The fact that he survived was a miracle. So, I don't want to draw any sort of conclusions from this and what you're supposed to get out of his music, but I think it's safe to say that his experience with fascism really shaped him as an artist, and you could say that his music is of the 20th century because of that, that, like, he's not the type of person to go through this experience and then write tonal music. I think that would be a bit dishonest. I think he made the right decision to try and articulate, like, music that was relevant to the world he was living in. And that's sort of what this represents, I think. Yeah, with that being said, I think we can get into it. The recording I'll be listening to is in the video description, and I'll let you know what I hear on this listen. I've listened to this piece a number of times. I think I first discovered it when I was maybe 17 years old, and loved it. But I'll try to approach it with fresh ears today, more or less. Okay, yeah, so hopefully you found this interesting. On this listen, I found like it was very short. It was kind of a breeze going through it, and I really appreciate how beautiful this manuscript is in the composer's hand. You can see all of the time and effort put into notating all of this. The unison stuff at the beginning and end are in my opinion, the most like iconic thing, like this glissandi stuff. It's the most iconic element of the piece. But then there's this long middle section which has an interesting build, like slow build up to it, and it's very remarkable what he manages to do with rhythm in this stuff, like in the sort of almost like chamber strings stuff. And you can also see that it's all carefully planned. Like there's this sort of strangeness to how each instrument enters and how the ensemble sort of changes its makeup over the course of this middle section. And you can kind of hear the connection to like this brutalist or modernist architecture, that sort of architectural world that Xenakis was in shortly before composing this. It is very hard to believe that he went from just writing modal-ish folk music right into this, but at the same time, I think he was leaning into what he was good at, and it goes to show what the advice of a good teacher can do, right? It's like you have this student in front of you who is clearly, they're like an adult already, they're an older student, they're clearly very intelligent, very talented, hardworking, they've accomplished greater things than you in other fields, just not music yet. And I mean, what else do you say to them other than like just nail it, And the rest is history. We might get to some other Xenakis, but I don't think we have any more in the orchestra series. So this will have to be it for now. Next, we will be looking at some more Messiaen. I can't remember if it's the Tarangalila Symphony. I think it might be another birdsong one from the 50s, actually. But it's one of those two. And then we'll just keep going further back here.